Associate Director of Health and Wellbeing Program with the Workwell Center and your host for today. In support of May Mental Health Awareness Month, we are so excited to have you all here today for the Courage to Go Forward 5-week webinar series sponsored by USC's Healthy Campus Mental Health Subcommittee. The goal of the series is to raise awareness about mental health, reduce stigma, and provide support and community. So over the next 50 minutes, our speakers will be sharing their experiences around this very important topic, sharing support resources, and engaging you in conversation. Throughout the session, you're welcome to use the chat or the Q&A function to ask questions or to make comments, and we'll also have a few minutes at the end for Q&A, along with an evaluation survey for you to fill out and a raffle. Please make sure to mute so we don't have any background noise, and we'll go ahead and get started. So I'm filling in today for my director, Laura Hilton, who had a last-minute personal conflict. Laura is the director of the Workwell Center, formerly known as the Center for Work and Family Life, which was USC's longstanding employee wellness program at USC. Just last year, we rebranded to the Workwell Center, and we've expanded our services to include the Health and Wellbeing Program, in addition to counseling, coaching, and consultations. So today we have a stellar panel joining us, including Doctors Varun Soni, Mark Miller, and Allison Pimentel. This session will provide you not only with new information, but experiences that you can take away and cultivate. We'll hear about the history of meditation in world religions, its popularity as a non-secular mindfulness practice in America, and its utility to support your mental health and wellness. We'll also hear about self-compassion and share resources available to you. But first, we invite you to take a minute to stretch, stand, move in any manner that feels best. So if you want to join me, you can make sure you're sitting or standing, shoulders are back and relaxed, maybe do some shoulder rolls. Oftentimes we get very tight when we're sitting and leaning forward. You can just reach up and interlace your fingers and stretch above you. Lean to one side. I'm going fast because of the interest of time, but you can always hold these stretches for about 30 seconds each. And just do some twists in your seater as you're standing and listening to this webinar. So what does the evidence say about meditation for mental health and well-being? Meditation is a practice that has been used for centuries to cultivate a sense of inner peace and calm. In recent years, there has been a growing body of evidence that suggests that meditation can have a significant impact on your mental health and well-being. So here are some ways in which meditation has been shown to help improve mental health. First, reducing stress and anxiety, one of the most well-known benefits of meditation. Studies have shown that regular meditation can reduce the levels of cortisol, the stress hormone in the body, and this can help you feel more relaxed and less anxious. Also improving attention and focus. Meditation can help people train their minds to stay focused on the present moment rather than getting distracted by thoughts or worries. And this can be very helpful for those who struggle with attention deficit disorder or any other attention-related issues. Meditation has also been shown to enhance emotional well-being, with studies showing that regular meditation can improve mood, feelings of happiness and well-being, and reducing symptoms of depression. Even managing chronic pain, meditation has been found to be effective in managing chronic pain. By training the mind to focus on the present moment, people can learn to manage their pain more effectively and reduce the negative impact on their mental health. And finally, improve sleep quality. Meditation has been shown to improve sleep by reducing sleep quality by reducing stress and anxiety, promoting relaxation, and helping people fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer. So overall, this growing body of research suggests that meditation can have significant positive impact on our mental health. Whether you're dealing with stress, anxiety, depression, chronic pain or sleep issues, meditation may be a helpful tool for improving your mental health and well-being. And we have a list of references at the end for those of you that might want to do a deeper dive into the literature. But now I'd like to move to our panelists, our experts in the field. And it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Varun Soni, who is the Dean of Religious and Spiritual Life, providing spiritual, religious, and moral care for students, faculty, and staff, with his team overseeing chaplaincy for a campus that has more religious groups than any other in the US, including 31 religious directors. Dr. Varun Soni is an author, a speaker, a thought leader on interfaith communities. And a fun fact, he has family on 5 continents that collectively represent every major religious tradition in the world. So now I'll turn it over to Dr. Varun Soni, and I'll stop sharing.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie, for that very kind introduction and for the invitation to participate in this critically important event. Thank you to all of you out there for joining us during your lunch to talk about these really important issues, challenges, opportunities that we have on campus. And I'm really grateful to be here to help us think about some of these issues because I spend a lot of my time and energy thinking about the topics of today. This is my 15th year here at USC as Dean of Religious and Spiritual Life. I was appointed in 2008. And in that period of time, I've seen, as you can imagine, a lot of change on campus and a lot of change in the world and how those changes kind of intersect with each other. The first 5 years I was on campus, there was a lot of joy on campus. Even though students were graduating into the economic crisis of the time, they still had a lot of hope. These were millennials who wanted to go out in the world and be the change that they wanted to see in the world. They came to me to talk about big questions of meaning and purpose, of what matters to them and why it matters to them. They asked me questions like, how do I live my dreams? How do I translate my values into action? How do I live an authentic life? How can I be the change that I want to see? Those were really inspiring conversations for me to have as the university's chaplain, because those were the conversations that I used to have with my chaplain and that inspired me to do this work. But about 5 years after I started, I began to notice that my conversations took a dramatically different and troubling turn. I began to notice that instead of asking me, how should they live? Students began to ask me, why should they live? Instead of talking about meaning, they talked about meaninglessness. Instead of talking about hope, they came to me with hopelessness. And what I began to see is a rise almost around the same time or a little bit after the advent of the iPhone popularity. I began to see a rise in anxiety and depression and unfortunately in suicidal ideation. And at the root of it, I felt was loneliness. I felt students were really lonely. They felt disconnected. In the age of social media, they felt as though they weren't able to connect to people. And I began to talk at that time about a mental health crisis in American higher education. Many people called me alarmist and said that I was overreacting. But at this point, no one would disagree that there's a mental health crisis for young people in American higher education. More than half of college and university presidents will tell you that's their number one concern for their job is the mental health of their students, faculty, and staff. And so this has now become part of the zeitgeist. Now everyone's talking about a mental health crisis. We're having this conversation during Mental Health Awareness Month, but I'm no longer actually talking about a mental health crisis. I see it in a different way now. And it's because I have a particular point of view. I now really see it as a spiritual health crisis. I see the anxiety, depression, alienation, disconnection, ideation of our campus as a manifestation of larger spiritual sort of concerns and challenges around meaning and purpose, significance, authenticity, thinking about a reality greater than ourselves, a community of care, et cetera. Those are questions that have traditionally been the domain of religion, but at a time when more than half of our students were not raised with religion, compared to just 2 or 3% of their grandparents, this is a significant shift in American religious history that's happening in real time. I fear that our students are losing the protective factors that religion has historically provided their parents and grandparents. I tell our students you don't need religion, but you do need the things that religion has historically provided in order to feel like you're thriving and flourishing. What are those things? Meaning, purpose, significance, authenticity, community, ritual, transcendence, awe, ethics, and a place in the world. You can find that in sports. You can find that in popular culture. You can find that in religion, but there has to be something sacred. I've been talking with students a lot about what does it mean to be spiritually healthy. And I'm writing a book about this, and I thought maybe I would socialize the thesis of the book here. This is the first time I'm talking about this publicly, but I've come to the conclusion that what it means to be spiritually healthy in this day and age, in the age of those who are not religiously affiliated, is to be able to ask and answer 4 questions. I call them the 4 T's. They're the questions of truth, time, tribe, and transcendence. So the question of truth, what is your truth? What is sacred to you? We all have things that keep us up at night. What gets us up in the morning? What is our North Star? Where is our compass pointing us towards? Your truth can change over time, but there's always some aspiration to truth. And I think it's important to be able to articulate at any given moment, what is that truth in your life? What is your North Star? The second is time. What is your relationship with time? As you get older, you realize what I've realized, which is that your real asset in life is time. It's not money. You can make and lose money, but you can't make and lose time. Our time is limited. COVID showed us that. We should really have an urgency for the time that we have on this planet, and understand that it is limited. And everyone, all of us die young, quite frankly. Even if we live to 90, we die young in the scope of a 14 billion year old universe. And so our time really is limited. So what is our truth? What is our relationship with time? The third is tribe or team. Who are your people? Who are your 3 or 4 people who have your back? We can only have 150 relationships in our life, according to a sociological study done in the 1990s. That's the Dunbar number. We can't have 100,000 friends, even if we have 100,000 friends online. And so what are the relationships that really sustain us? And who are the people who really have our back in a sort of non-judgmental way? And the fourth T is transcendence. How do I find beauty or awe or a moment in my life? How do I feel connected to a reality greater than myself? There's a kind of a cheesy sort of bumper sticker. It's not how many moments you have, but how many moments that take your breath away. Not how many breaths you take, but how many moments that take your breath away. That's transcendence. What are the moments that take our breath away? I found that for me, mindfulness practice, contemplative practice really helped me think about some of these T's. It really rooted me in the question of time, because a mindfulness practice brings you to present moment awareness. And all we have in our life is the present moment. Everything we experience in our life, we experience in the present moment. What connects us with everyone who's ever lived is that we all are born, we all will die, and we all experience life in the present moment. When the past was here, it was the present. When the future is here, it's the present. And mindfulness reminds us of that core truth of time. I think also mindfulness gives us a taste of the transcendent. It allows us to get to the space between our thoughts, to get past ego, even if just for a moment, to get past an idea of a self, even if just for a moment. And so much of spiritual practice is really that. It's getting past ego, getting past self. And so when I was in college, I did a study abroad program in Bodh Gaya, where the Buddha was enlightened. I lived in a Buddhist monastery, and I learned mindfulness practice. I met His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, who became my spiritual teacher. And 20 years, and I brought that back, and I began to teach my friends on campus what was Vipassana practice, is now called mindfulness, in the 90s. 20 years later, when we started Mindful USC Mindful USC here on campus, I kind of drew from those experiences, but the whole zeitgeist had changed. When I had come back in the 90s and was talking about mindfulness, it was kind of there was a lot of suspicion. People accused it of being an occult practice. I was with Deepak Chopra 2 weeks ago, and he told me how when he was talking about meditation, people wanted to run him out of town. Now, 25 million Americans practice meditation. And the year that I went to India, there was the first peer-reviewed paper by John Kabat-Zinn on mindfulness practice. Last year, probably more than 1,000 peer-reviewed papers came out on mindfulness practice. So the zeitgeist has changed. It gives us an opportunity to really engage with contemplative practice within a secular, a secular scientific context, not just a spiritual one. And we couldn't have a better program than Mindful USC, and we couldn't have better leaders than Allison and Mark in leading us. We probably train more people in mindfulness practice than any American university. And so I'm really grateful to them for their leadership, and I'm going to hand it over now to Allison.
Thank you, Varun. And hello to everyone. It's so good to be here to just really spend some time thinking about, sharing about, and experiencing what some of the benefits of mindfulness practice are and can be. Varun, you spoke beautifully about what some of them have been for you in your life. And I want to spend my time with you talking a bit more about mindfulness, and then also doing a little bit of practice with you. So as Varun sort of indicated, mindfulness is a way of paying attention. It's a way of paying attention on purpose to the present moment, this moment that's happening now, with an attitude of openness, acceptance, and willingness to be with what is. So to break those elements, those three elements down a bit, we come to when we're mindful, we are deliberately placing our attention somewhere, rather than allowing our minds to do what they do most of the time, which is sort of run wild and free. So we're choosing to place our attention in a specific place, and really that could be any place at all. Mindfulness leaves nothing out of its purview. Anything can be attended to mindfully. So we do it on purpose. We do it to this moment right here. Like Varun said, it's the only one that's actually happening, not the one that came before. We're not leaning back into the past with reminiscences or recriminations or regrets. We're not leaning forward into the future with anxiety or anticipation. We're actually presencing ourselves right here in this moment, which is really both the fruit and the seed of all other moments. And there's a beautiful Inuit saying, yesterday is ashes, tomorrow is wood. Only today does the fire burn brightly. And that's really what this practice invites us to do, be in the heat, the fire, the warmth of our lives. And then finally, we do all of this with an attitude of acceptance, with openness, with non-judgmentalness, with the willingness to be with things as they are. And that's not so that we are apathetic and sort of lean back and do nothing. We accept things as they are, so that we can relate to things and respond to things as they are, not as we wish them to be, or we hope they would be, or we regret that they're not. We're really cultivating our capacity to respond to the moment. And in this way, mindfulness really supports us to live and move through our lives in a grounded way. Often, especially here in the West, mindfulness practices and other kinds of contemplative practices are sort of presented as solitary endeavors, very personal and individual, when in fact they're relational, they're inherently relational. We're all connected. When we cultivate qualities of heart, mind, spirit that are good, that are supportive of our well-being, then we move through the world from that place. Then that touches everybody we touch. That ripples through, all of the lives that we're connected to, which are actually all of the lives. So this is an important component to the community aspect, the connection aspect of the practice. What we, and again, Varun alluded to this earlier, what we share at Mindful USC are practices rooted in the ancient wisdom teachings of Asia, Southeast Asia, combined with modern Western understandings and research. So really, in the past several decades, scientists, particularly neuroscientists, are confirming and researching and exploring what sages and yogis and mystics and wise ones for millennia have known, and which anecdotally we all have had a taste of in our own lives, just the power of presence. I think that there's these qualities that we cultivate in our practice are potential antidotes to the common forms of psychological express that we all experience as human beings. No one of us is immune to rumination, anxiety, worry, fear, anger, all of that stuff. We're humans. These are states that we experience. And the qualities that we cultivate in mindfulness practice really serve as a powerful antidote to that. And Varun, earlier you talked about Deepak Chopra, and there's a story from that I've heard him share that I really love and that I'll share here. When he ordained for a month as a monk, I'm not sure where he went, I believe somewhere in Southeast Asia, he ordained as a monk, he shaved his head, he donned the robes, and as part of that experience, you go on alms rounds. So you go with your bowl and members of the community, and you go to members of the community and they fill your bowl with food. And this is how there's this beautiful exchange between the monastics, the people of the spiritual people in the community with the people of the community, and they serve each other and they care for each other. So he's going around with his begging bowl, and his senior monk asks him after some number of days, how has it been doing this? And he said, I had no idea how much it would hurt. My feet hurt from walking through the roads and through the forest. I mean, it's excruciating to take another step. And the senior monk said to him, yeah, that foot on the ground, that hurts so much. But the foot that's lifted, there's relief there. So I love that story. It helps me a lot in my own life. And I share it a lot because really what these practices are encouraging us to do, inviting us to do, opening up the possibility of is to place our awareness on the lifted foot. That at any given moment, yes, there's pain, there's suffering, it hurts to walk the path of life. But there's also relief, there's also freedom, there's also ease. And we can begin to train our attention to place it where it would be most helpful to go. At Mindful USC, we offer teachings based in this wisdom, based in these traditions. And we offer a whole lot of classes. We offer practice groups. If you don't want to commit to a class, which are typically series, you can drop into practice groups and just learn so many different strategies and techniques to practice. I'll end by sharing that the other day, a couple of weeks ago, I was at a conference where the U.S. Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, was speaking. And he, like Varun, has identified loneliness as one of the most significant public health crises that we're facing right now. And he led the audience through a practice, which I want to share with you, a version of which I want to share with you as a mindfulness practice. So if you are willing to join me, I invite you to just raise your right hand and place it over your heart. If it's comfortable for you, you can close your eyes. And the practice that Dr. Murthy invited the audience to do is what I'll invite you to do right now, which is I'd like to ask you to think about the people who have loved you over the years. People who have been there for you during difficult times, or who have supported you without judging you, who have stood by you, who have guided you, who you have learned from, the people who have celebrated your moments of joy, your successes, who've derived pleasure and fulfillment in your happiness. Just for a few seconds, feel their love flowing through you, lifting you up, brightening your mood. Know that you carry that love with you in your heart. You are and always will be so deeply deserving of that love. And when you're ready, you can let your palm fall to your lap and slowly open your eyes. I'll close with a quote from Dr. Murthy. He said, "What you felt in that brief meditation is the power of love. That is the power of social connection. That is our birthright. It's who we were designed to be and what we were designed to experience. All of us, regardless of what walk of life we're in, have the ability to shine a light on the bright spots whether those are relationships that bring joy or movements in our community that are helping to grow connection. It's where we use our power to focus our attention, where we use our power to focus the attention of others, that ultimately determines whether or not we create more light in the world or more darkness. We at Mindful USC are in the business of creating more light. And I'll hand it over to you, Mark, to share about self-compassion.
Thank you so much, Allison. Before you pass it over to Mark, I just wanted to formally introduce you. We didn't get a chance to do that. For those who don't know Allison, she is the co-director of Mindful USC, also a psychologist and longtime insight meditation practitioner and teacher who works at the intersection of mindfulness, mental health, education, and social justice. In addition to teaching at USC, she teaches at UCLA's Mindfulness Awareness Research Center and Insight LA. And then Mark, I'd like to formally introduce Mark as well, continuing with our esteemed panelists. Mark co-directs Mindful USC, is a clinical psychologist with experience in student counseling services at USC, which was his prior role. Mark's passion is mindful self-compassion to help USC community members build skills to manage strong emotions and recurrent thoughts while being compassionate towards themselves and others. And I'll turn it over to Mark now.
Yeah, thank you. So as Julie mentioned, I teach mindful self-compassion. I'm not going to tell you a lot about it, but we have classes every semester in mindful self-compassion. But I want to teach you mindful self-compassion to you in a specific way. Allison gave us a really beautiful definition of mindfulness. I'm not going to repeat it. I don't think I could, but it's a beautiful, succinct, clear, and complete definition. But when we look at mindfulness from the place of self-compassion, that definition changes a little bit. So here's the definition, or a definition, of mindfulness within self-compassion. Mindfulness is knowing how and when you're suffering so that you can be responsive to that suffering. Now, suffering is a really kind of activating word, and a lot of people don't want to be associated with suffering, don't want to hear that word, but I'll just ask you to bear with me for a couple of minutes, because I want to teach you about this way of dealing with suffering through self-compassion, through this exercise. You'll see 4 letters right near my very old picture when I wasn't quite as gray. HALT. HALT is an exercise from AA, but it is actually good for everybody. And this, I will argue, is an exercise that directly gives us an easy access to self-compassion in our everyday lives, because it deals with 4 experiences that make everything else worse, right? So if we look at hunger, which is H in HALT, do you make great decisions when you're hungry? I'm guessing you probably don't. I know I don't, right? They call it being hangry for a reason. So the question becomes, mindfully, how do you know when you're hungry? And I don't have a lot of time. I would usually ask you, how do you know? What are your symptoms of hunger? So I want you to just ask yourself. You can type it in the chat, or you don't have to. Just say it to yourself. How do I know when I'm hungry, right? Maybe I feel angry or upset. Maybe I feel a little shaky. Maybe it's difficult to concentrate. Maybe my stomach hurts. Maybe I'm thinking about food, right? So you have people mentioning headache, great, low energy, perfect, right? These are the symptoms of hunger. That is mindfulness in the moment of our suffering. Now, you may not want to be called being hungry suffering, but I will, right? And so here's the easy thing about HALT is, what do you do when you're hungry? Now, when I teach this to medical students, they really don't get a chance to eat. So they don't really have an answer to that question. I'm hoping everybody in this room does fairly quickly. What do you do when you're hungry? You eat something. You eat something, right? There's this apocryphal story at the medical school that the med students in the morning, they wake up and they take a frozen burrito and they put it in their pocket. And hopefully by lunchtime, it is unfrozen enough that they can eat it somewhere, usually, eat it half frozen in the hospital, usually in a stairwell, usually while crying because it's a hard life, right? But if you can actually just notice the symptoms of hunger and say, oh, I'm hungry, I will eat something. That is self-compassion. It is addressing the suffering of hunger. Hopefully that makes sense. And perhaps this is the simplest one of all four of them. The most complex is the next. A is for anger, but really it's a placeholder for any strong emotion: sad, glad, mad, afraid, ashamed, disgusted, disappointed, any strong emotion. And the question, right, how do we apply mindfulness to this? Well, how do you know when you're having an emotion? Feel free to put it in chat, but I'll just go ahead and tell you, right? For instance, how do you know when you're angry? Well, maybe your ears or your neck or your face get hot. Maybe those butt-kicking muscles in your arms and your legs start to activate. Maybe there's muscle tension somewhere else in the body. Maybe you have the urge to move towards or away from the person or situation you're angry at or about, right? Same with sadness. How do you know when you're sad? Oh, I feel heavy in the chest. My corners of my mouth are turning down. I don't feel like engaging with the world. So I want you to just take a moment. How do you know which emotion you're having right now? And we can't tell with just one sign, right? I have a friend, she gets butterflies in her stomach for everything, right? Her son just graduated from college. How are you feeling? Oh, I have butterflies in my stomach. I'm so happy, right? Oh, my car just got broken into. Stuff got stolen. How are you feeling about that? I'm so sad and angry. My butterflies in my stomach, right? So we can't choose just one. You have to get a kind of a constellation of sensations to help you know which emotion you're feeling. And research from UCLA has said very clearly that if you can label the emotion that you're having and spend a few moments, not with the consequences of your emotions or the sources of your emotions, but actually just with the sensations of your emotions in your body, the emotion will last less strong, will be less strong and last less long. Now, I think UCLA has it backwards because I think most of us resist our emotions. And if we just notice them, allow them to be there, give them a name and feel them, we go down to baseline, which is just emotions tend to last for a few moments when they're paid attention to. They're signals, right? Emotions are a little bit like children. I don't know if you've ever worked with children, but if a child wants something from you, they'll pull on your pants or your skirt and they'll look up. And if you don't pay attention to them, they'll yell harder and might start to say something. And if you pay attention to them, still don't pay attention to them, they might yell. And then if you continue not to pay attention to them, they disappear and then something breaks in the next room, right? Our emotions are just like that. So if we can be with them, name them, feel them in the body for a few moments, they will tend to pass. Emotions are messengers for care. So that's A, any strong emotion. L, loneliness. How do you know when you're lonely? Well, maybe you're on social media constantly, or you're texting everybody you know, or you're thinking about people, or you're saying, I feel lonely, right? This is a less clear-cut way, clear-cut experience, right? To know exactly when we're lonely. But you might suspect it if you're reaching out, if you're desiring attention, care, love, you might be feeling lonely. And I tend to use a 5-sense model for dealing with loneliness. The first is, how many senses can you use, right? So for instance, being with somebody in the room, you can see them, you can hear them, you can touch them consensually, you can smell them, right? You probably all remember the smell of grandmother or somebody that you love dearly. That makes us feel connected, right? So the more senses you can use, the better. Being in the same space is the best. But during COVID and other circumstances, we don't get to have that. So the next is what we're doing right now. I can see and hear you. That's 2 senses. The next is the telephone, 1 sense. And do things go well when we're on text, right? So I don't tend to tell people when they're feeling very lonely to text other people, right? Because if somebody ends a text with a period, we go crazy sometimes, right? I've seen that so many times. So you can just start to notice, can I put myself in a situation in which I get what I need from somebody else with the most senses used as possible? And I'll ask in a moment if you have any questions about that. And then T, tired. How do you know when you're tired? Being tired often feels a lot like being hungry. So you kind of have to start to notice, how do I know when I am tired? I might be low energy, I might be irritable, I might be able to have trouble keeping my eyes open. How do you know when you're tired? And then once you do notice that that is present, how do you take care of yourself? Well, ideally, it's rest, but that is hard to do in today's society. Rest is really a rare thing for many of us. So ideally would be rest. And if we can't rest, there's a lot of research now that a tiny bit of exercise, walking around your space, or if it's safe to walk outside of your space, will increase memory and concentration if you do it for, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes, just a few minutes. So halt, what I'm going to encourage you to do for the rest of your life, at maybe 3 or 4 times a day, is to ask yourself, halt, am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Am I tired? And if the answer is yes to any of those questions, to take that compassionate action to work with that suffering. That's and yeah. So I don't know if there are any questions, or Julie, where you want to go from there, but that's why I wanted to share. This is mindful compassion in action. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you so much. We'll definitely have time for questions. Hope you all enjoyed our speakers and got a taste of some of the things that you can do to just really take care of yourselves and just be in the present. So thank you so much. Feel free to start asking some questions in the chat while I make a couple of announcements, and then we'll open it up to any live Q&A. I do want to announce that we have 2 more sessions coming up in our series. Next week, we'll highlight our partners from Campus Wellbeing and Education and Care for the Caregiver on creating a culture of care and community. And then we'll wrap up with our final session on strategies to promote psychological safety within our teams, how to find the right therapist, and ways to incorporate compassion and self-care as you go forward. So we hope to see you all there. It's not too late to sign up and let others know as well. And then before I open it up to Q&A, here's additional resource available to faculty and staff, as well as students, should you or anyone you know need additional support. So with that, we have about 10 minutes left for discussion, questions, comments, anything that you'd like to share. Feel free to use the chat or the Q&A function. And while we do the Q&A, I'm just going to share this screen so we can have our evaluation survey filled out to earn a chance to earn a $50 gift card. Your feedback is really important to us. And then we'll wrap up with a raffle. So let me just check the chat. I saw one earlier. There was a question about the mindfulness sessions. Are they taking place in person at lunch at the Fishbowl? Anyone want to answer that question?
I'll answer. Thank you so much for that question. We don't currently have that session live is not happening. We have drop-in sessions most days of the week, I think, except for Tuesday at lunchtime. And if you go to our website and check out our practice groups, you'll see the listings there as well as the links. And you are welcome to just drop in. That's like the easiest way to connect with us, is to just hop into a drop-in meditation sit. Each sit contains, it consists of, a teaching, a short teaching on some of the myriad aspects of mindfulness practice, guided practice together in community, and some opportunity for community building, getting to know one another. So please join us. Next semester, in the fall, we hope to have a lot more in-person programming happening.
Thank you for that, Allison. Question, Dr. Soni, can you add Dr. Soni's 4 aspects of spirituality to look for in or out of religion to the chat? I think those are the 4 T's you were mentioning. Dean Soni, do you want to talk more about that?
Sure, I'll drop them in the chat. The T's are truth, time, tribe, and transcendence. I'll put them in the chat.
Wonderful. A lot of positive comments are flying in, so make sure you're reading that. Any other questions from the group? How do you deal with restlessness during a mindful session?
Yeah, I'm happy to tackle that. I'll just say that, restlessness actually isn't a problem. In fact, I will argue that anything that happens while we're meditating isn't really a problem. you can sit with the sensations of restlessness. In fact, you can make restlessness, those sensations, the object of your awareness. And often when we do that with things we feel like are difficult or maybe even intolerable, we start to see them within context, that they aren't quite as powerful and we can tolerate them some more. But I'll also add this caveat. Often we think that when we're in distress, we should sit down and be perfectly still. Sorry, there's so much noise outside. Hopefully you don't hearing it. So what I'm going to argue is that sometimes if you're in distress and you think meditation might help, but instead you feel more activated, I would just encourage you to do a different type of meditation, perhaps walking with your mind or your awareness on the soles of your feet, because often that activity, that motion can be helpful. So I'm going to ask you to be kind of insightful on what you need when you meditate, right? Do you want to be still and calm? Do you need some motion, activity? There's mindfulness for all of those states. Hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you for that, Mark. And along those lines, how many minutes, how often would you recommend for someone to practice mindfulness and meditation?
I'll jump in. I think, that's one of those questions that has no answer. I think for people just starting out, doing something that's doable, committing to something that's doable, 5 minutes of practice or 10 minutes of practice, for some people can be sort of a manageable amount of time, and you can start small and then add incrementally up as you continue on your path. But there's no right answer for that. And in fact, there's so many different ways to practice that, you could sit in a meditation practice, that's formal, or you can thread mindfulness throughout your day. And in fact, we have at Mindful USC an everyday mindfulness class. It's actually one of my favorite classes to teach. And we talk about how mindfulness can just be a part of your daily life, just even drinking a sip of water mindfully is, 5 seconds of mindfulness. And if you add those up throughout the day, then drop by drop, you fill the cup.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Question here. Can you go deeper into addressing the A, or the strong emotion of the HALT practice, Mark?
Yeah, I'll just say, and if there's something more specific you want to ask about that, please put that in the chat. But I'll just say that emotions are really charged, that all of us were brought up, regardless of what our family system was, or even if we had a family, we were brought up with messages about some emotions being okay or preferable, and some emotions not being okay and should be denied. And so in HALT, awareness of all emotions that are arising, whether you are perfectly comfortable with them, whether they were valued in your culture, your family culture, whatever it is, the more we can be with an emotion, the more we find out that they are tolerable. In fact, when we start to work with emotions, you can start to notice that emotions kind of follow a curve, right? We notice them and then they start to peak. And the truth is that if you can be with the sensations of the emotions from the moment that we notice them through the other side of the peak, all the way down to the other side, we can start to notice that they actually are tolerable. We don't have to avoid them, and we can be with them, right? So that's really the basis of the practice. Can I be with this emotion? Can I name it? And can I follow it across the peak so that if I can get to the other side, if I can survive that peak, then I know that all emotions are workable and survivable, and I don't have to avoid them through all the horrible ways that we try to avoid our emotions: sleeping, drinking, exercising for hours, whatever it is. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd love, Mark, if I may, Julie, just to add like an example to what Mark is talking about from my personal experience. Years ago, when my daughter was about 5 or 6, we were in Baja, in a very remote location with no vehicle. And she fell off the top of a bunk bed and split her chin open. And it was quite an ordeal. We were 2 hours away from the nearest town. We had no car. And as you can imagine, there was a lot of fear, anxiety, all the A that Mark is talking about. We, with the help of neighbors, kind neighbors, we were able to get her to medical care. Her chin was sewn up. We returned many hours later in the wee hours of the night. And I tried to go to sleep and couldn't, because I was racked with emotion, with all of the A's. And because of my practice, I was able, I felt like I wanted to just crawl out of my skin. I couldn't tolerate the discomfort, the distress, the fear, the anxiety of the moment. And I just, because my practice came up to support me in that moment, as it does in so many moments of my life, I was able to just feel the feelings, pounding of my heart, stomach in knots, fear coursing through my veins. And as I named it, those difficult sensations subsided and I was able to sleep. And, this is sort of like it's not even an extreme example, because all of us encounter really challenging things in our lives. But it's an example of how, attending to the internal experience with just a willingness to be with what is, not pushing it away, not wishing it was something else, but just being with what it is, with how it is, can help to move you through to the other side.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be an emergency, because you're just reminding me of my son, who would have what were known in technically are called affect storms, where he would, when he was younger, he would just they look like tantrums, but they're not tantrums. I mean, tantrums even exist. That my son would just get so activated. And I remember he would sit in our lap and he would say, "I don't know what this is. I don't know why this is happening." And we would say, "It's going to pass. What does it feel like?" And eventually they would pass. And he would say, "Oh, that wasn't so," it was uncomfortable. It wasn't so bad. So emotions can cause really a lot of confusion. And we orient ourselves, just as Allison said, by going to the sensations, being with what's going on, and labeling them.
Thank you for that. Such important messages, just for us to really be aware of our spiritual well-being. So thank you again, Dr. Soni, Dr. Mark Miller, Dr. Allison Pimentel, for your time, for sharing these beautiful moments with all of us today. Really, really appreciate it so much. In our last minute, we love to do a raffle. So if you enter your name into the raffle, we have 2 lucky winners, and you'll be receiving a WorkWell journal. So you can use it for reflection, journaling. Congratulations, Carolina Castillo. And we'll pick one more winner. And Amy Yu. Congratulations. We'll be in touch with you to deliver your notebooks.
Yeah, just a quick question. Is it the same one as the last week?
I believe so.
Okay, so maybe you can do the raffle again, so another winner can guess that.
Oh, did you win last week?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, we can pick another winner unless you want a second one. We'll spin again. Thank you, Amy. Lorena Duran. Congratulations, Lorena. Well, right at time. So thank you all for being here. We hope to see you next week. Thank you again, everyone.